Stay tuned for the next edition of Zoom Landlord Tenant Talk Radio. The opening topic, Landlords Beware. New habitability requirements require a stove and a refrigerator. Hello. Yes, another edition of Zoom Landlord Tenant Talk Radio coming at you every Saturday at 3 p.m. If you were listening live, the name of the song was Piano Man by Billy Joel. And the inside story on that was that in 1972, Billy was having legal disputes with his record label and moved from New York to Los Angeles. And to make a steady living, he became a lounge piano player at a restaurant called the Executive Room. It was a piano bar on Wilshire Boulevard. And he was actually working under an assumed name by the name of Bill Martin. And as he would take requests from the patrons, he was always observing their characteristics, so certainly to the regulars who frequented the bar. Now, most of the song's characters were actually from these real patrons or staff who were at the Executive Room, though lightly fictionalized. And literally, these people really exist, which was John at the bar, to Paul, the real estate novelist, Davy, who is still in the Navy, the waitress practicing politics, and finally to the businessman that slowly gets stoned. Okay, let's talk about the show format, and that is we have an opening topic. And then after the opening topic, those people that are in the Zoom meeting room, I will call on you if you electronically raise your hand. I do call on you on the basis upon which you raised your hand, so you can do so now, and you'll be sure that I will call on you before the show ends. If you ever want to know how to watch this broadcast live and be in the Zoom meeting so you can ask your questions, all you got to do is go to my website, which is evict123.com. That's EVICT123.com, and you will see the credentials for joining this meeting every Saturday at 3 p.m. If you're watching this on YouTube and you find that what I am putting forth here, dealing with landlord-tenant law or dealing with how to manage your real estate properties, if you find that helpful, then I would ask if you could please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, because it really does help me. Before we get into the topic at hand, I do want to talk about Proposition 50. And if you think about that, it's on our ballot in November. 25% of the voters in California are registered Republican, and 46% are registered Democrats. Now, in the United States House of Representatives, there are 52 congressional seats allotted for California, but yet, based on those percentages of registered Democrats versus registered Republicans, Republicans only hold 9 seats out of 52. So what do they want to do with Proposition 50? They want to withdraw the congressional districts so that more Democrats will be elected. And we all know what that means. It's just a further destruction of our property rights. So I'm imploring everybody out there, if you want to protect your property, your rights as a Californian, please vote no on Proposition 50. Okay, let's talk about the opening topic, and that is landlords beware. New habitability laws are in vogue, and that is now they're including stove and refrigerator as to be required. So I do want to share my screen on that issue. The first thing is I do want to talk about what is this warranty of habitability that landlords are charged with. So on that, let me take a look at this and let me show you this. Okay, so every residential rental agreement, verbal or written, there is an implied warranty of habitability. So what is that? Every residential lease in California carries this non-waivable duty that the unit must be fit for human occupation. It applies regardless of the lease language. Now, landlords cannot require tenants to accept substandard conditions or to contract around these habitability requirements. So you can't have a lease that says, hey, if anything breaks and it's less than $100, then that's the tenant's responsibility. That would go against California law, and you can't do it. If something's wrong with the premises, you got to fix it. It's as simple as that. So what are these conditions dealing with habitability? Well, number one, the premises have to be waterproof. That is effective waterproofing and weather protection for the roof, exterior walls, and unbroken windows and doors. In other words, you can't have it raining inside your unit. Also, you have to have proper plumbing and gas facilities that are in good working order, and of course, to work to code. Also, of course, you have to have hot and cold running water. If your property doesn't have hot water, you got to get somebody out there immediately to fix that water heater. Don't wait. Do it immediately. Of course, you also have to have proper electrical systems, all again to code that has proper wiring and outlets. You also want to have adequate heating facilities maintained in good working order. If you had a built-in heater and it goes out and it's one of those heaters that are so old that it can't be replaced, you cannot get around the code by just giving them a space heater. A tenant has the right to have a heater, and it's the building code built in, and so that the tenants can use it, and it's supposed to obviously warm the unit. So none of the space heaters. You can give a space heater if, for example, you're waiting for parts as a workaround, but it's not something that can be done. And I've seen some of my clients, unfortunately, that they just, well, we told them it had no heat when it came in. And by the way, there's a fireplace there. He can light firewood. Well, that's not going to work. Also, you have to have proper sanitation, which that means that the landlord is charged with keeping the building and grounds clean and sanitary, free of debris, garbage, or pests like rodents and vermin. Also, you have to have an adequate number of appropriate garbage receptacles and keep them clean and in good repair. We had a client call up, I think, to the show and asked, is it our responsibility to move those garbage cans out and in on garbage collection day? And the answer is that is the landlord's responsibility. I don't care that you live, in this case, the client told me he lived 50 miles away. That's your responsibility. You might want to enlist the services of a gardener or pay your tenant something by giving them something off the rent, but that's your responsibility as a landlord. Okay, you also want to make sure that the premises are structurally sound, that floors, stairways, and railings are maintained in good order. Now, under the new law, which takes effect as of January 1st, 2026, if you have any staircase or balcony that is not inside the four walls of the property, but extends out from the walls, you have to have now that's certified. You've got to hire one of these companies that are advertising now that are certified to do this, and you have to make sure that that balcony or staircase is in good condition, okay? And that technically you have to have that certification by January 1st, 2026. If you supply a appliance, if you do, then you have to maintain it. So if something goes wrong with that appliance, then you have an obligation to make sure that it's in working order. So a garbage disposal, or maybe you installed an air conditioning unit, if it goes out and you supplied that at the initiation of the tenancy under the law, under this doctrine of habitability, you have to maintain that and keep it working. You also have to have, for safety issues, you have to have smoke alarms, which is one in each bedroom and one in the hallway. You also have to maintain carbon dioxide detectors if your property is next to either a garage or some area where smoke can get into the unit. Then you do need to maintain carbon dioxide detectors. Also, you don't have to take care of things that are just cosmetic in nature. That has nothing to do with habitability. Okay, nothing to do with habitability. So if there's a crack in the tile and it doesn't affect the habitability of the property, that's not your job to do that. Now, you might want to do that as a pride of owner landlord, but that's not your responsibility and that's not what the law requires. Okay, so what happens in the situation where the landlord doesn't take care of the implied warranty of habitability? Well, then in that situation, the tenant has options. So let's take a look at what those options are. And these are the tenant's options. Number one, they can do what they call a repair in the duct. So if the landlord asks you to fix that garbage disposal and you refuse to fix it, and he gave you a legitimate amount of time to do so, then in that case, the tenant can have the garbage disposal fixed and deduct it from the rent. It's called repair and deduct. Now, another thing the tenant can do if the landlord legitimately is not taking care of an issue, for example, that you need to have the premises sprayed for pests, he can do what they call rent withholding. This is probably one of the most abused offenses that tenants do when they're being evicted. So what is the concept? The concept is that, hey, I told you to fix the garbage disposal. I told you to fix the air conditioner. That was your responsibility. I gave you a reasonable opportunity to fix it, and you refused. Now I'm going to withhold the rent until such time as you fix those items. And that's legitimate under this law. But unfortunately, this is one of the most abused laws because every time we bring forth a case for non-payment of rent, the tenant will claim that, hey, the landlord refused to fix something and therefore I was withholding the rent. It's one of the most abused situations under the law. And of course, that's why I always request in my rental agreement that there be a clause that states that all repair requests must be in writing. All repair requests must be in writing unless it's an emergency. This way, when the tenant comes to court and says, hey, the landlord refused to fix anything, of course, the landlord's position is, you never told me, but we can have the added situation where we'll ask the tenant, hey, where's my writing that you asked for all these things? Because we're denying it happened and you have to put it in writing. And of course, if the tenant can't produce that writing, which of course he can't, then we have the right to defend ourselves and be able to still evict the tenant. What's the next thing that tenants can do? And that is they can actually walk out on the lease and then they have no further responsibility. If in fact it was a substantial nature and the landlord refused to fix this item, the tenant can just walk off the lease and then the landlord would not be able to hold the tenant responsible under the lease. And the last one that I'm going to talk about is this legal action. And that's where landlords, and it's happening all the time, are getting sued by tenants, affirmative, for habitability issues. So this is a situation which we're seeing more and more. We're getting about 3 of these cases a week where we're having to defend landlords. And the problem with these cases is that a lot of insurance company will not defend on these bases. It's excluded from the property. So what can you do as a landlord? Well, number one, make sure that if there is a repair request, you take care of it immediately. Number two, make sure that you have a provision in your rental agreement or do a change of terms of tenancy. And by the way, both of those items, change of terms of tenancy or a rental agreement, are contained in my website at, again, evict123.com. That's in the free form section. And you can impose that condition on your tenants that you want to make sure that repair requests are in writing. Now, the other thing that you can do is regularly inspect the property. At least go in twice a year to inspect to make sure the property is okay. If the tenant lets you in, great. Check it out and make sure that there's no problems with it. This will dissuade tenants from bringing forth these phony habitability lawsuits against you. Also, if the tenant refuses you access to the building, write them a letter and say, I tried to get in this month to make sure that everything was okay because I take my responsibilities as a landlord seriously, and you refuse to let me in. I'm going to try again in 6 months. If you have this documentation and they bring forth a habitability lawsuit, they're really going to be on the shy side. You're going to be able to defeat those unlawful cases that are brought against you. Now, let's move on. What has the legislature done now? Well, they've expanded what the doctrine of habitability is. And what is that? The governor just signed AB 620H, which forces landlords to supply stove and refrigerators to tenants for any tenancy started as of January 1st, 2026, or any lease that was renewed or amended after that date. So before, a landlord might want to supply a stove, but not always wanted to supply a refrigerator, or maybe both. In this case, the landlord has no option. This is now considered as a habitable place that you must install a stove and a refrigerator. They're just putting more onus on the landlords. And yet, of course, we're stuck with severe rent controlled issues, dealing with escalating insurance costs, assuming you can even get insurance in this state. So the tenant can, in this situation, waive his right to a stove and refrigerator. Maybe he has his own, but you should have the tenant put that in writing. And if the tenant changes his mind, then you've got 30 days to then supply a stove and a refrigerator. Just another trampling of our rights, but that's all this state is good for. They can't solve insurance problems. They can't solve issues dealing with fire, including putting water in fire hydrants. But that's what this state is all about. Every time they pass a law, it's going against landlords. And that's why, landlords, you need to be diligent. You need to know what your rights and obligations are. And you can't delay. When something needs to be fixed, you need to fix it. And that, my friends, concludes our topic of landlords beware, new habitability laws dealing with stove and refrigerator being required. Okay. Let's move on now. We're going to go into our opening questions and answers for those people that are in the Zoom room. And we all know the rules, and that is that this broadcast is for informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for legal advice. And if you do want to talk to me, I'd love to talk to you if you're in the Zoom room. All you got to do is electronically raise your hand. And that's in the toolbar on the bottom. If you don't see it on the toolbar on the bottom, then look in a folder called Reactions. You'll see it in there. Click on that, and I do take the callers in the order that they did raise their hand. So do it now, and I'll be sure to get to you for this. Also, this broadcast is for general questions only. If you have a specific case with me, please call me at the office. God knows I will be there on Monday. So stick to just general questions only. And last but not least, if you're talking to me, please leave your camera on, because it makes it much more enjoyable for myself and for the audience. Again, you people watching on YouTube, if you like what you hear and you want to learn something every week, then please subscribe to my channel and hit that like button. And with that, we're going to open it up to our first caller, and that person's name is Jackie. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. Hello, Jackie.
Hi, Mrs. Block, can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Thank you. I have two questions. First question, on Wednesday last week, during our repiping of one of our units in the city of El Monte, we observed a propane tank and a barbecue grill in the kitchen. So I texted the tenant that propane tank and grill are not allowed on the premises, and she must remove these items. She tested back, okay. Now question, how do I know that she removed these items?
Well, the only way you would be able to know is if you, number one, went in and inspected it. So you can do that. Why don't you serve her a notice and you want to inspect that? It's really dangerous to have propane stove inside the house. It's got to be ventilated. Even under California law, it states, I believe, that it has to be 5 feet away from any structure. Some degree away from any structure. So yeah, you want to make sure that that she acknowledges to you that she removed it and lets you take a look at it.
Okay, so I can serve a 24-hour notice, or
yeah, I think you found a violation of the contract, so I would serve a 24-hour notice. If she won't let you in, we can figure out a way to evict her on that basis.
Okay, so 24-hour notice and go in to inspect to see,
Yeah.
make sure she removes them.
Yeah.
Okay, second question is a concern about the tree called moringa tree. Is overgrown and is near our shared block wall with the neighbor. So last week we stopped by the neighbor house and it's a HOA and they're not home. So we left a letter at the door of the neighbor and another letter to the HOA door. So just requesting them to review the situation, maybe move the tree to a safer distance or trim it down or something like that. Is there anything else we should do?
Not at this point. Obviously, if there's a tree on your neighbor's land and it's creating damage for your land, then they are responsible. So make a demand letter. And if they refuse to do anything, then you tell them that you're going to hire a professional tree groomer or trimmer so that, and that you're going to hold them responsible. Anyway, thank you very much. We are moving on to Nancy P. How are you?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. The first one is, what is the affirmative lawsuit?
Okay, well, that's like when you're getting sued, for example, in my opening discussion, you're getting sued by a tenant. So they file a lawsuit against you and they serve you, and now you have to defend the lawsuit.
It's called affirmative lawsuit.
Well,
And
I'm just saying no. I'm using that as a term, but it's any lawsuit that's being filed against you. Sometimes landlords, I know in tenant eviction cases, will file a lawsuit and then the tenant files an answer, and then the landlord will go, "Oh my God, the tenant is suing me." No, that's just defending the lawsuit. We're the ones who filed the lawsuit. It's an affirmative lawsuit. And again, the tenant themselves can also file a lawsuit against you, for example, for habitability reasons. But just defending the lawsuit is not considered to be an affirmative lawsuit.
okay, now the second question is, let's say that an owner suing the tenant, and then let's say that the tenant lost, and let's say the tenant won't pay rent again with the lawsuit that they continue on. In that case, can you double file a lawsuit again?
No,
For them not paying rent.
okay. Your example is a little confusing. If you brought forth a lawsuit against your tenant, like a tenant eviction case, then you'd be suing him for both the rent owed and also for possession of the premises. Now, you're saying that you won that lawsuit?
Yeah, let's say I win the lawsuit.
Okay,
Let's
so if you
suppose
win the
what-
lawsuit, then you're going to get a judgment for the rent owed, which you can collect on. You'll also get a judgment for possession where you can have the sheriff remove them from the property. Now, if in fact you have a judgment which only was, let's say, issued as of October 1st, but we know now that the sheriff's office is taking 2 months to do a lockout, well, that extra 2 months, you'd have to sue separately for that additional rent, or you could take it from their security deposit. Anyway, thank you very much. We are going to move on to Albert. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself.
Hi, Dennis. Can you hear me?
Yes. How are you, sir?
All right. Thank you. Question. I heard that the um, rent price gouging has been extended to January 7th, 2026. I was just wondering if that is, can you confirm?
I have not heard that. I know that it's extended to January for dealing with building supplies, but not for rent, not for tenants and landlords in terms of increasing the rent. So you're free to go on that one. It's over this month. I don't think it ever applied based on the Costa-Hawkins Rental Housing Act, which I think is supreme over any emergency that the governor can declare, and in conjunction with Penal Code Section 396. But notwithstanding that, it's over this month. Raise your rents to market level if you have the ability to do so.
I really appreciate. The other question I had was in regards to ICE raids that LA County has ordered a rent moratorium again, or could you please shed some light? And does that apply to
Well,
city?
they do have something if you can claim that you were impacted by the fire, but very few people are going to be able to claim that they were impacted by the fire. Really only 16,000 businesses and homes were touched by the fire in a negative way. There are 3.5 million businesses and homes in LA County. So to say that that's part of it is very rare.
So that's not a self certification does not apply in this
Yeah,
case.
they have to do a self-certification, but if you get one of those, of course, we'll deal with that. But again, it's a very minority situation where we would be confronted with those types of self-certifications. Certainly
Thank
at,
you.
at this point, it's October and the fire happened in January. So okay, Albert, thank you very much. Moving on to an old friend, Jim Polina. How are you?
Hey, Dennis, you caught me swimming in Morro Bay.
There you go. I like how you're doing that. You're good with the Zoom.
So, a couple questions. One is, if my tenants cause an ant invasion by leaving out food on the counters or even in the cabinets, unpackaged, or in the garage, and they have mice in the garage, my lease says they're responsible for the cost of eradicating the pest. What say you?
I don't have a problem with that, though I think it's going to be very difficult to prove. But assuming you could prove that it was the tenant's negligence which created the requirement of having a pest control company come out, then I would say that it is the tenant's responsibility at that point.
Okay. Second question deals with this requirement of a stove, as you call it. I assume they don't define a stove, and the reason I say that is with my ADUs I'm building, I'm planning on putting in plug-in appliances, a plug-in stovetop, electric stovetop, and also a toaster oven.
Okay,
I
so first
assume
of
I'm not.
all, they do define it. You can't do, for example, just a hot plate, but you can do a stovetop, so that's permissible. You don't need an oven, it's just a stove. A stove is not an oven, so your toaster oven would work fine in that situation. And of course, you have to have a refrigerator, and the refrigerator can't just be one of those little under counter ones. It has to be a regular size refrigerator.
Gotcha. All right, going back to the swim.
Take care, Jim. You gotta love that guy. Okay, Eric Chavez, how are you today on a Saturday? Dodger Day, of course.
Right, doing well, Dennis. So I got three questions. First, want to clarify about the stairway. So exterior stairway, you're saying after 2026 we have to get certified now?
That's correct. If you have a stairway that's not like tucked in the middle of your building, but it actually is on the outside, okay,
Yep.
attached to the wall of the building, but not
Yep.
underneath, then you're going to need to have it certified by January 1st, 2026. That's another requirement that the state has put on. Also for any balconies. Now, again, if you have a balcony that's built in and kind of like a cruise ship, if you can picture that, then that doesn't need certification. But if it extends past the walls of the property, then you do need to have that.
And who does the certifications?
There's many companies now that are doing that. If you go to any of like the Apartment Owners Association, check out their vendors. There's
Got
a
it.
lot of
Okay,
people doing that.
got it. Okay, second question. With the now the requirement for refrigerators and stoves. So, and if I heard you right, so after 2026, any new leases, they have to be provided, and we have to, if I heard you right, we have to maintain them too. So if the refrigerator or the stove, goes out, we either have to go and repair and replace.
That's what the law says. They're just grabbing money from your pocket, young sir.
And what about now anything prior to that? So
No,
that doesn't
if they,
apply.
no, it has to be a new tenancy or where you're doing, let's say, renewing a lease. So if you had a 1-year lease and then for some reason you wanted to do another 1-year lease, you're stuck. So I would just let the lease go month to month, and therefore it's not a renewal of the lease.
Got it. Okay, now the last question, and this applies because most of the stuff I deal with and manage and own is under the LA Housing Department RSO. So right now for evictions, for non-payment, at fault, what's the time frame for non-contested that's taking a
If it's
process?
uncontested, we're generally getting a judgment in about 30 days. But then
Okay.
comes the big delay, which is the conspiracy by the County Board of Supervisors, because who administer the LA County Sheriff, they're taking over 2 months to do a lockout. Prior to the pandemic, it was 2 weeks. Now it's 2 months. It's insane dealing with the delays at the sheriff's office.
And what about contested?
Contested, add another month to the equation.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Moving on to Harold Robbins. What do you got to say for yourself?
What do I got to say? I'm still in it's like a permanent shock mode every time you have this show. It's always like a flurry of new SHIT from our friends from City Hall, in the state. So here, okay, this is a three-parter. Now that we have to do all this stuff, if we have new tenants, as far as the heater, I missed that part. Does it have to be central heating, or can you have like a little portable heater in the room and have them in different rooms?
No, you cannot have portable space heaters. There has to be a fixed heater in your property that's built into the wall.
Okay, last question. Can you have a refrigerator put in their room as opposed to the kitchen?
I don't know that you're allowed to have a refrigerator in a bedroom. I don't know why anybody would want to do that.
No,
But
I would. You have to see them. No, they have these little smaller refrigerators.
well, yeah, you can't use one of those smaller refrigerators as a requirement of that statute unless it's an efficiency apartment, like a zero bedroom. Okay.
Last quick question. If you raise the rent, does that change the terms of the original agreement?
I don't think so. No, it'd have to be where you're doing a revised rental agreement.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you very much. And I've got, what does it say here? SJL, how are you?
I'm good. Okay, so I had these tenants just move out, and they said that, yeah, like their lawyer emailed me saying that they will sue on such and such date after I found out that, they didn't want to pay a lot of their rent. And so for 10 years they lived there, and they changed the locks on me, and they wouldn't give me a copy of the key. And now they're claiming habitability when.
Well, one has nothing to do with the other. The fact that they didn't give you the key or they changed the locks, that's something that you could have done an eviction on. However, of course, you don't need to because they're already out. What I would
Right.
do is set yourself up now by having the unit inspected by a professional so he can note the condition of the property, take pictures of the property. Commonly, they'd like to sue you for mold, so I would have mold testing done to show that whatever condition they're claiming doesn't exist, because you had a contractor go in there, take pictures, give you a complete report. Also, you had a pest control company go in there, give you a complete report, have a mold company go in there. So you're being very proactive to show that any potential lawsuit that they're going to get you for, those items didn't exist. I'll take that as thank you, Dennis. And we're going to move on to B246. Betty
Sorry,
Chang,
Dennis?
how are you?
Dennis? Oh, sorry, Dennis, sorry, I couldn't unmute, but would you say like a contractor, like my own contractor could go in and make the report, or the LA City?
Whatever a licensed contractor is. All right. Thank you very much. We're moving on to Becky Chen. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. Becky, can you unmute yourself? Okay, we're moving on to an old regular, though he's not old, and that is Salvador Calderon. How are you?
I am doing good. I'm doing good. I have two questions, just two questions. You know what? I built an ADU 2023. Now you're talking about, I don't need it. There's just 3 steps. I don't need to have that certified or anything like that because they passed inspection on that, or do I?
No, that would not. It has
Okay, okay,
not just like 3 steps. No.
yeah. And then one more question. When you're gonna raise the rent, I know you were talking about like sending it out 95 or 90 day or 100 days before you're gonna raise it. Now, do you have to mail it, hand deliver it to them, like say, hey, there's gonna be a rent
Okay.
increase, or what?
Oh, okay. For a rent increase, if you're going to raise the rent 10% or less, that's a 30-day notice.
I
If
live
you
in Whittier. It's not rent control.
Right. I'm just giving everybody the information. So if it's 10% or less, it's a 30-day notice. If it's more than 10%, it's a 90-day notice. Now, you just need to mail it. But if you do mail it, then you have to allow an additional 5 days for mailing.
Thank you.
So if you're going to raise the rent, I would mail it today because today is the 25th today. So on that basis, you'd have your 5 days and then either an additional 30 or additional 90.
All right, thank you.
And thank you. Let's move on to Alan Zaman. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself.
Hi, Dennis. How you doing? Thank you
I
so
am
much for everything. So just a quick
happy to
question.
help.
Thank you. I have a retail tenant at a shopping center that I manage, and their lease expired over a year ago. They're currently paying about $1,838 per month, but I'd like to increase it by about $200 just to bring it up to fair market value. And my question is, what would be the best way to send them a notice regarding this increase?
Okay, so first of all, our firm does handle commercial evictions as well as residential. With regard to that, if he's on a month-to-month tenancy, you could do a 30-day notice to terminate the tenancy if you wanted to. And that just send it by certified mail. You'd have to be out in 30 days. If you want to raise the rent, you can raise the rent to any level that you want. It only requires a 30-day notice, unlike residential properties. And I would just send that by certified mail to him. But again, leave an additional 5 days for mailing. So if you're going to raise the rent, do it today. Send it out by certified mail today. And he'll have to pay the rent come December 1st.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Okay. I'm going to swing back to Becky Chen. If you're available to unmute yourself, I'll take you now. Okay, Becky, we did try. Anyway, I got David wants to. Oh, we got a couple more coming through. David, I'll ask you to unmute yourself.
Hi, Dennis. Thank you so much for everything as usual. A question is again regarding providing refrigeration and stove. My tenants all have had stove provided by me. Regarding refrigeration, they lived there for many years. Now, what happens if their refrigerator breaks down and they ask me to replace it?
And the answer is you have no obligation to replace it. These are only for tenancies that commenced after January 1st. So if you rented to these people prior to January 1st, 2026. So right now you're fine in terms of if they ask you to fix it. If it's their refrigerator, then it's their responsibility. But if it was your stove, then it doesn't matter. Whenever, if you supplied the stove or any appliance, then you have an obligation to maintain it.
I understand, but what if they say, okay, your lease now is being renewed month to month. According to this law, if it's being
That's not a renewal of the lease, that the lease just continues. If you gave them a new lease to sign, that's a different story. But if it's the same lease, that's not how the law is being interpreted.
Okay, any modification that I should be aware of?
No, I mean, you can raise the rent, as another caller stated, if you want. But again, if you're going to offer them a new lease, a renewed lease, then, or it's a new tenancy, then you're going to be responsible.
Thank you so much for your help.
Okay. Moving on to Margaret O'Brien.
My question is, I got distracted when you said that landlords are required to wheel out trash cans for trash pickup. Did I hear that right?
You heard that right, unless we're talking about like a single family residence, and that would be the tenant's responsibility. But if you've got multiple units and you've got like communal trash receptacles, then that's your responsibility as a landlord. Again, you might want to just pay a tenant to do it, but again,
No.
that is the landlord's responsibility.
In my case, it's I do not pay for trash. So they buy their own trash cans, individual trash cans, and I write it in
What city is this?
San Pedro.
San Pedro, and they don't have, and this is an apartment house?
Yes, but there is no room. It's an old, these apartment houses are 90 years old, and
Got
they
it.
don't have room for
A trash can.
a
Yeah,
communal.
if it's their trash can, then it's their responsibility. But if it's
Thank
your
God.
trash can, then it's yours.
I thought I have to go down and take out trash cans. Okay,
No,
thank you very much.
you relax, my love. All right, we're going to call it a day. Thank you very much for joining in. You know, we'll be back next Saturday at 3 p.m. I want to give my good wishes to the Los Angeles Dodgers, who hopefully are going to kick ass tonight, and also to my team, who had a good win yesterday, the Lakers, and they're going to be playing in Sacramento tomorrow. So anyway, everybody, have a great weekend, and thanks for joining Zoom Landlord Tenant Talk Radio.